For more of this kind of content, you can subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. Dr. Sarah Chen wiped sweat from her forehead as she adjusted the bioscanner in her backpack. The humid air of planet Verdania clung to her skin like a wet blanket. Around her, the alien jungle pulsed with life, strange calls echoing through the canopy above. "Your equipment is so primitive," Kethvar's voice cut through the morning mist. The 7-foot Zephyrian scientist stood nearby, his scaled green skin glistening in the filtered sunlight. His 4 arms worked efficiently, setting up advanced scanning devices that hummed with alien technology. How do humans expect to contribute meaningful research with such crude instruments? Sarah bit back her first response. The joint expedition had been negotiated at the highest levels between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire. Both species wanted to study Verdania's unique ecosystem, but cooperation was proving difficult. "These crude instruments have mapped 17 new species since yesterday," Sarah replied, checking her readings. "Sometimes simple tools work better in complex environments." Kethvar's elongated snout twisted in what Sarah had learned was their version of a smirk. 17? My scanners have cataloged 43 species, including 3 that your equipment missed entirely. His secondary arms gestured dismissively. Humans always mistake quantity for quality. The research camp buzzed with activity around them. Human and Zephyrian scientists worked in separate groups, sharing data reluctantly. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Dr. Chen," called James Rodriguez, her research partner, "the soil samples from Sector 7 are showing unusual microbial activity. Want to take a look?" Sarah nodded, grateful for the distraction. As she moved toward the analysis station, Kethvar's voice followed her. "Microbial activity? How quaint. We identified those organisms hours ago. They're harmless decomposers. Nothing more." "Maybe," Sarah muttered. But something about the readings bothered her. The bacterial patterns seemed too organized, too purposeful for simple decomposition. Hours passed in tense cooperation. The Zephyrians shared their advanced atmospheric readings, while humans provided detailed biological samples. Progress was slow, hampered by constant competition and veiled insults. As evening approached, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Deep in the jungle, her bioscanner had detected something the Zephyrian equipment had missed. A faint energy signature coming from a series of ruins half a kilometer into the dense forest. "I'm taking a small team to investigate the structures to the north," she announced during the evening briefing. Kethvar's vertical pupils narrowed. "Those ruins are outside our designated research zone. The expedition protocols clearly state." "The protocols allow for extended investigation of significant discoveries," Sarah interrupted. "And this qualifies." "Significant according to whom?" Kethvar stood, his imposing height casting shadows across the briefing area. "Human judgment has proven questionable at best." Sarah felt her patience finally snap. "You know what? Fine. Come with us. See for yourself what human judgment can accomplish." The challenge hung in the air. Kethvar's 4 arms crossed in a complex pattern that indicated deep consideration. Finally, he spoke. "Very well. I will observe this human expedition. Perhaps it will provide amusing data on your species' limitations." As the camp settled into night routines, neither Sarah nor Kethvar realized they were about to discover something that would test both their species' survival instincts. In the ruins ahead lay secrets that would force them to choose between prejudice and cooperation. The jungle whispered around them, keeping its deadly secrets for now. Dawn broke through the canopy like shattered glass, casting strange patterns on the jungle floor. Sarah checked her equipment one final time, while her team of 4 humans prepared for the expedition. Across the clearing, Kethvar stood with 2 of his own kind, their scales catching the morning light. "Remember, we're here to observe and document," Sarah told her team. "Stay alert for any biological anomalies." Kethvar approached, his movement fluid despite his large frame. "My associates and I will accompany you to ensure proper scientific protocols are followed." His tone suggested he expected to find nothing but human incompetence. The trek through Verdania's jungle was treacherous. Twisted vines hung like snares, and the ground squelched with each step. Strange flowers released clouds of glittering spores, forcing both teams to activate their breathing filters. "Your route is inefficient," Kethvar observed after they'd been walking for an hour. His scanner showed a holographic map floating above his palm. A direct path would reduce travel time by 37%. "Direct paths don't account for bog zones and predator territories," Sarah replied, carefully stepping around a patch of bubbling mud. "Sometimes the longer route keeps you alive." As if summoned by her words, a thunderous roar echoed through the trees. Something massive crashed through the underbrush nearby, sending smaller creatures fleeing in all directions. "Apex predator," whispered James, his hand moving to the emergency beacon on his belt. Kethvar's scanners hummed louder. "Verdanian ridge hunter, highly territorial. My readings suggest it's tracking our scent trail." The group froze. Through the dense foliage, they could see movement. Something large and muscular prowled just out of sight. Its breathing audible even at distance. "We need to move," Sarah whispered. "Slowly, no sudden movements." "Incorrect," Kethvar said, his voice barely audible. "Ridge hunters respond to fear pheromones. Rapid movement would trigger an attack response." For the first time since meeting him, Sarah found herself agreeing with the alien. They stood perfectly still as minutes ticked by. Finally, the sounds of the predator faded into the jungle's background chorus. "That was close," muttered Dr. Lisa Park, Sarah's botanist colleague. "That was nothing," Kethvar replied, but Sarah noticed his scales had shifted to a darker shade. Something she'd learned indicated stress. They continued through increasingly difficult terrain. Ancient trees rose like cathedral pillars, their trunks so massive that entire ecosystems flourished in their bark. Sarah's bioscanner went wild with readings, detecting hundreds of species in every square meter. "Look at this," she breathed, stopping beside a cluster of translucent mushrooms that pulsed with bioluminescent light. "The enzyme patterns are unlike anything in our databases." Kethvar studied the organisms with his own equipment. "Fascinating. They appear to be processing atmospheric nitrogen at an impossible rate. How did your primitive sensors detect this?" "Sometimes you have to look with your eyes, not just your instruments," Sarah said, carefully taking samples. "Pattern recognition is one thing humans excel at." As they climbed higher into the forested hills, the ruins finally came into view. Massive stone structures rose from the jungle floor, covered in centuries of growth, but still imposing. The architecture was unlike anything either species had encountered. "These predate any known civilization in this sector," Kethvar admitted, his scientific curiosity overriding his arrogance. Sarah's bioscanner began registering unusual readings as they approached the main structure. "I'm getting massive microbial activity near the central building," The energy signature is off the charts. Impossible, Kethvar said, checking his own instruments. My scanners show nothing unusual. But as they stepped through the overgrown entrance, both human and Zephyrian equipment began registering something that made everyone's blood run cold. Deep within the ruins, something ancient was stirring. The interior of the ruins defied explanation. Smooth corridors carved from living rock wound deeper into the structure than should have been possible. Bioluminescent moss provided an eerie blue-green glow, revealing intricate carvings on every surface. The artistic style suggests a civilization at least 10,000 years old, Dr. Park observed, running her fingers over the elaborate symbols. Kethvar's forearms worked his scanners frantically. My equipment is detecting massive energy fluctuations from the lower levels. Something down there is very much alive. Sarah's bioscanner was practically screaming with warnings. The microbial readings were unlike anything in known science. We need to be extremely careful. I'm reading cellular activity that doesn't match any known life forms. As they descended deeper into the complex, the air grew thick and humid. Strange sounds echoed from the depths, almost like breathing, but with an artificial rhythm that set everyone on edge. There, Sarah pointed to a massive chamber ahead. That's where the readings are strongest. They emerged into a vast circular room with a domed ceiling covered in more of the glowing moss. In the center sat a structure that looked part machine, part organism. Tubes and vessels filled with glowing liquids connected to what appeared to be a massive processing unit. It's a laboratory, Kethvar whispered, his usual arrogance replaced by awe. An ancient bioengineering facility. Sarah approached one of the transparent containers. Inside, something moved. Not quite plant, not quite animal, but definitely alive. These organisms, they're not native to this planet. The cellular structure is completely artificial. Engineered life forms, Kethvar confirmed, his scanners working overtime. But by whom? And for what purpose? James called out from across the chamber. Dr. Chen, you need to see this. There are specimens here from dozens of different worlds, including ones that look remarkably like our own species. The implications hit them both simultaneously. Sarah's face went pale, while Kethvar's scales shifted to deep purple, indicating extreme alarm. Someone was studying us, Sarah said quietly, collecting samples from Earth and Zephyria, but that would mean they've been watching both our civilizations for centuries. Before anyone could respond, the ancient machinery around them began to hum louder. Lights that had been dim for millennia started growing brighter. The engineered organisms in their containers became more active. We've triggered something, Kethvar said, backing toward the entrance. Our presence has activated automated systems. That's when they saw it. In the largest container at the center of the room, something massive began to stir. What they had taken for equipment was actually an enormous creature, part biological, part mechanical. As it awakened, its eyes, each the size of dinner plates, opened and fixed on the intruders. Everyone out, Sarah shouted. But it was too late. The creature released a cloud of spores that filled the chamber in seconds. Both humans and Zephyrians found their breathing filters overwhelmed by the sheer volume of microscopic particles flooding the air. The spores are entering our bloodstream, Kethvar gasped, his advanced physiology apparently offering no protection. They're rewriting our cellular structure. Sarah felt a burning sensation spreading through her body. Her bioscanner showed her own DNA being altered in real time. It's not trying to kill us, she realized with horror. It's trying to change us. Around the chamber, other containers began opening. Creatures that defied classification emerged, all bearing the same artificial modifications. They moved with purpose, surrounding the mixed group of humans and Zephyrians. The ancient civilization, Kethvar wheezed, his breathing becoming labored. They weren't just studying our species. They were preparing to merge them. As the spores continued their work, Sarah felt her consciousness beginning to change. New knowledge flooded her mind, scientific understanding beyond anything her species had achieved. But with it came the terrifying realization that she was losing herself in the process. "Fight it," she called to her team, to Kethvar, to anyone who could still hear her. "We have to fight the conversion." But the ancient machinery had waited 10,000 years for the descendants of its test subjects to return. It would not be denied its ultimate experiment. Sarah's vision blurred as the alien spores continued their work. Her body felt like it was being torn apart and rebuilt at the cellular level. Around her, she could hear the groans and gasps of both her human team and Kethvar's Zephyrian colleagues. "The conversion process," Kethvar managed to say through clenched teeth. "It's designed to create a hybrid consciousness. We'll lose ourselves completely if we don't find a way to reverse it." Through sheer force of will, Sarah forced herself to focus on her bioscanner. The readings showed the spores attacking specific genetic sequences, the same ones that made humans and Zephyrians different species. "It's targeting our unique characteristics," she gasped. "The things that make us us." The ancient creatures moved closer, their hybrid forms both beautiful and terrifying. Sarah could see elements of dozens of species woven together into new combinations. This is what they would become if the process continued. "My people have a meditation technique," Kethvar said, his forearms trembling, but still managing to work his scanner. "It allows us to maintain consciousness during extreme physical stress. But I would need to teach you quickly." "Do it," Sarah replied without hesitation. As chaos swirled around them, the Zephyrian scientist began explaining a mental discipline his people had practiced for millennia. It required absolute trust between minds, something that had seemed impossible just hours earlier. "Focus on what makes you human," Kethvar instructed, his voice growing stronger as he fought off the spore effects. "Your creativity, your stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Hold on to those traits." Sarah found herself thinking of all the times humans had overcome impossible odds. The first time her species had reached for the stars, the determination to explore unknown worlds despite the dangers. She thought of her grandmother's stories about surviving the food shortages of the 2080s, about human ingenuity finding solutions where others saw only problems. Around them, the conversion process began to slow. The spores, designed for ancient genetic patterns, struggled against the combined resistance of two very different but equally determined species. "It's working," James called out, his voice clearer than it had been since the spores hit them. "The cellular changes are stabilizing." Kethvar's scales were shifting rapidly through different colors as his immune system fought the artificial organisms. "Your resistance patterns are fascinating," he told Sarah. "Human genetic diversity is providing unexpected advantages." Working together, they began to understand the ancient machinery. The civilization that built this place had tried to create the perfect hybrid species, but they had failed to account for the one thing that made both humans and Zephyrians successful: their stubborn individuality. We can use this, Sarah realized, studying the readings from both their scanners. If we combine your meditation techniques with human adaptability, we can not only resist the spores, but potentially cure them. The next few hours were a desperate race against time. As the ancient creatures pressed closer, Sarah and Kethvar worked side by side, their teams supporting them despite their own battles against the conversion process. There, Kethvar said finally, pointing to a control panel covered in the strange symbols. If we can reverse the polarity of the bioengineering system, it should neutralize the spores in our systems and deactivate the facility. But someone needs to interface directly with the machinery, Sarah observed, and that person will be exposed to massive doses of the spores during the process. They looked at each other, both understanding what needed to be done. "I'll do it," they said simultaneously. For the first time since meeting, Kethvar actually smiled, his facial features arranging themselves in an expression Sarah was beginning to recognize as respect. "We do it together," he said. "Human determination and Zephyrian precision. If this ancient civilization wanted to see cooperation between species, let's show them what real partnership looks like." Hand in hand, literally in Kethvar's case, since he had 4 of them, Sarah and the Zephyrian scientist approached the central control system. The ancient machinery pulsed with malevolent life, seeming to sense their intent to disrupt its 10,000-year mission. "Remember the meditation pattern," Kethvar said as they placed their hands on the bioorganic interface. "Focus on what makes us different, not what the machine wants us to become." The moment they made contact, the conversion process intensified beyond anything they had experienced. Sarah felt her consciousness being pulled apart, examined, and reconstructed. Beside her, Kethvar's scales flickered through colors so rapidly, they became a blur. "I can see it," Sarah gasped, her awareness expanding through the ancient network. The civilization that built this, they destroyed themselves. The hybrids turned against their creators because they had no individual identity, no purpose beyond the merger. Through the shared connection, Kethvar experienced human memories for the first time. He saw through Sarah's eyes the moment she had decided to become a scientist, her determination to understand life in all its forms. He felt her frustration at his dismissive attitude, but also her genuine desire to work together despite their differences. Sarah, meanwhile, experienced Zephyrian culture through Kethvar's memories. She saw a society built on logic and precision, but also one that valued honor and scientific truth above all else. She understood that his arrogance came from genuine pride in his people's achievements, not from malice. "I was wrong about humans," Kethvar admitted as they fought to maintain control of the reversal process. "Your unpredictability is not a weakness. It's what allows you to find solutions we would never consider. And I was wrong to judge your whole species by first impressions," Sarah replied, feeling the ancient machinery beginning to respond to their combined efforts. "Your logical approach and advanced technology could have saved us hours of struggle if I had been willing to listen." Around them, the hybrid creatures began to slow their approach. The ancient programming was recognizing something it had never encountered before. 2 species choosing to cooperate while maintaining their individual identities. "The reversal is working," James called out from across the chamber. "The spore concentrations are dropping rapidly, but the process was taking its toll." Sarah could feel years of her life being consumed by the effort required to override 10 millennia of alien programming. Beside her, Kethvar's breathing had become labored. his advanced physiology pushed beyond its limits. "We're not going to survive this," Kethvar observed with typical Zephyrian directness. "The energy required to complete the reversal exceeds our biological capacity." Sarah felt a moment of fear, but then she thought about all the human explorers who had given their lives to advance knowledge and protect others. "That's okay," she said firmly. "Our teams will make it out. They'll take this knowledge back to both our species. Maybe this is how we finally learn to work together." "Perhaps," Kethvar agreed, "though I regret not having more time to study human determination. It is quite remarkable." As the reversal process reached completion, the ancient machinery began to shut down permanently. The hybrid creatures, freed from their programming, retreated into the depths of the complex. The spores in the air became inert, no longer capable of genetic modification. But Sarah and Kethvar collapsed, their bodies unable to sustain the massive energy drain any longer. "Sarah!" James rushed to her side as the other team members surrounded them. She managed to smile, looking over at Kethvar, who was being tended by his own people. "Take care of each other," she whispered. "Both species, we're stronger together than apart." Kethvar's final words were spoken in his own language, but his translator rendered them into English. "Tell my people that humans are worthy partners. Their strength lies not in their technology, but in their refusal to surrender hope. The greatest tragedies often come not from external threats, but from our inability to see past our prejudices and work together." Sarah and Kethvar's sacrifice demonstrated that when we choose cooperation over competition, understanding over judgment, we can overcome any challenge. Their deaths weren't in vain, because they proved that differences in culture, technology, and biology are not barriers to unity, but rather the very diversity that makes cooperation powerful. True strength lies not in proving our superiority over others, but in recognizing that our greatest achievements come when we combine our unique gifts for a common purpose. In the end, both species learned that the universe is vast and dangerous enough without making enemies of potential allies. The memorial, built at the ruins of the ancient facility, bears a simple inscription in both human and Zephyrian languages. "Here lies proof that we are stronger together."